Hello, Kyle here. In this video, I'm going to show you how to go about turning a standard conventional frame into a shadow box that has an artwork that appears like it's floating 3/16ths of an inch above the background. I know that sounds like an incredibly particular thing, but when you're doing small works on paper, this is actually an incredibly common and, when you know how to do it, easy and affordable way to present work that looks pretty damn good. First thing you'll want is a good knife. I've got an Olfa black blade in there because they're sharp and they stay sharp. A point driver is really more of a nice to have than a need to have, so you can use a conventional staple gun and jury rig a technique to make it happen, but it looks sloppy and it's confusing. This will make you happy. You'll want some acid-free archival double-sided tape, which is this stuff here. Aside from the packaging, this Scotch tape is excellent. And some nice, I go for the self-adhesive rather than the gummed just because I'm lazy and it's easier. But linen hanging tape is very strong, but it's also very easy to remove. So you're going to need that. A steel ruler, or a ruler with a steel edge for cutting. A framing ruler for positioning the final piece. A cutting mat. Pliers. Your artwork. Some pieces of acid-free foam core that have been cut to size, which the size is going to be slightly smaller than your artwork. It has to be small enough that you can't see the foam core even when you're on a bit of an angle. You're going to need a piece of mat board and your frame. The piece of mat board should be the size of the inside measurement of your frame plus the width of the inside twice. So if the inside measurement on this is 8 by 8 and this is half an inch tall, you'd want it to be 9 by 9. The important thing is that this has to be a fair bit bigger. I'd suggest going even larger if you can, because the scraps can be used as shims, which will be incredibly helpful later on. So the first thing you'll want to do is use your pliers to take out all of the existing points. I'm not always this awkward, I'm just holding my camera with the other hand. After those points are removed, you can remove the glass and backing. This is cut incredibly snugly. Wow. Of course things are unusual when I'm doing a video. Okay, so now you'll want to remove the glass and backing. You'll want to hold on to both of these items. Now this is the frame itself. You can just put this aside for now because you won't be needing it for a while. Okay. So now you take your mat board and be sure this is the back rather than the front. If you have trouble telling this apart, take a pencil and draw a big X on the backside before you cut it up. That'll make it easier for you. Now you'll want to center the piece of glass from the frame on top of your mat board. If you don't have confidence in your abilities or you're picky, you can use one of these great clear framing ruler things. I'm not sure the actual name of this tool, but they're fantastic. But I prefer to just cut this slightly larger than I need and then eyeball it. In the long run, it's faster. Now that the glass is centered, you'll want to lightly trace around the glass. I prefer a harder pencil, like a 3H, or I think this is a 2H, over a softer pencil. I find they stay sharp longer, they give you a better point, and if you make a mistake, hard pencils are significantly easier to erase. Once you've traced your outline, remove the glass. Now you'll want to take your metal edge ruler and place it on the inside of the line. Now, you don't want to cut on the actual line itself. You'll want to shrink it by the thickness of the mat and maybe a 32nd of an inch. I think I'm going to shrink it by about 3/32. When you're cutting a long distance with one of these rulers, it's very possible that it'll slide out, so it's good to try to hold it spread your hand out. Just do whatever you can to minimize the sliding. Since you're cutting on the back, you can even use some double-sided tape on the other side of your ruler to make it stick better. Just do whatever you want. And while holding the ruler, you'll want to score but not cut all the way through. You only want to cut, a map board is made of 4 layers. You want to cut through 3 of them, but keep the top layer intact. So don't do a lot of pressure on this one, just multiple passes and be cautious. All right. Now that I've scored just on the inside of that measurement, I'll want to cut out these corner pieces and discard them because they will not be needed. Now that the corners are removed, I'm going to want to make sure that these outside edges are perfectly even and make sure they're the appropriate length. To determine the thickness that you should be cutting these edges, you'll want to measure from the lip to the edge of the frame, so this distance here, but you also want to subtract the thickness of the map board plus the thickness of the cardboard backing that you're using. And you might want to even subtract a 64th of an inch or a 32nd, also just to leave space for the points that you're going to be adding as well. For me, that means that I'm going to cut this to, I think, 11/16 of an inch for these particular frames. That number will be different, so determine it yourself by measuring your frames carefully. All right, so you'll place the ruler right on this inside line and then measure out to 11/16 and put a mark. And you'll want to do the same on the other side. Now, by measuring on both sides, that'll make sure the line is straight. So line up the ruler and crop this part off. Do not discard these long lengths of scrap mat board because they will come in really handy later on as shims. So set that aside for now. Okay, now you're going to want to fold all of these edges up. If you have, this should be very easy, so if you have any sort of resistance, you'll want to go over and lightly score a little bit deeper. Basically, if folding these is really, really easy and there's no resistance, you'll get a very clean, minimal line. However, if the map board is left too thick and you really have to push hard to fold it, you're going to have a very ugly line with a lot of very visible ripples and marks, and it's just not going to be pleasant. So make sure you crop through at least the 3 layers and even score into the 4th. Be careful not to cut all the way through, but get as close to it as you can. Okay, now that you've completed the shadow box portion of the frame, it's time to take your artwork, put it on the cutting mat. Again, this is the surface of the artwork, so make sure what you're facing it down on is clean. Usually it's a good idea to have some acid-free paper or something, but this cutting mat is new, so I don't have to worry about that. So take the art. Now take your acid-free foam core and just confirm that it, get it centered, confirm that it is a smaller by, a 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch or so on all 4 sides. Use your linen tape to attach the artwork to the foam core backing. I find using, I think it's called a T-hinge, but so now that the artwork is taped to the foam core, we put more double-sided tape on the other side of this foam core and then place it down on the center of the shadow box portion. This is the part where having one of these will be immensely helpful, because if you're going to have like 2 or 3 inches of space on each side, it doesn't really matter because your eyes will be forgiving with larger distances. But For me, the finished object will be maybe an inch on each side. When you have that, your eye will pick up on if it's off by a 64th, people will see that, so you'll want to be accurate. Right. Now you'll want to thoroughly clean one side of the glass. Once that is done, you don't have to worry about this side so much. Place the glass inside the frame. Now that you have the glass inside the frame and you've made sure that it's clean, just take an air blower, because there's always going to be a piece of dust that you missed. All right, take your artwork. It's a good idea to get some acid-free masking tape or any kind of acid-free single-sided tape, and tape these edges shut neatly, because if you just plop this in now, they will kind of separate and be visible, and that won't look nice. So tape the edges, plop it in. Carefully insert the artwork. Remember these scrap edges. If there's any slide in this, use this as shims between the box and the edge of the frame. You want this to be very firm. Original backing material. Plop that in place. You'll want to look at the art before putting in the points, just to 100% confirm that you've got everything in a way that you're happy with it. So that looks good to me. And now take your point driver and install points. All right, so the points are in place. Finished shadow box. Of course, you'll want to give the front of the glass a bit of a wipe down. But I'd say this is ready to add some D-rings and hang. So that's how you turn a conventional frame into a shadow box.